Here's the thing. We all know how frustrating it is to be in a highly competitive market and try to find the right incentive that will catch the prospect or possible renewal's attention. But luckily for us, there's a company that can help us do exactly that, and it's AIM Cruise Incentives. AIM Cruise Incentives is a turnkey marketing program that's actually different. AIM Cruise certificates include a 5-day, 4-night luxury cruise vacation for two to the Bahamas, the Caribbean, and Mexico. There are over 175 dates and multiple ports to choose from, so booking is super easy for the prospect or resident. After you purchase your cruise certificates, you and your team have up to 12 months to issue them out to the receiver, which means that you can incorporate into other giveaways or events, while giving your prospects and residents up to 36 months to redeem them. They're also fully transferable, and AIM Cruise Incentives will provide you with all of the marketing materials needed to make your campaign a success. All of this value is starting at $139 per cruise certificate, depending on the quantity ordered, which, let's be honest, is way less than we all spend for incentives, but the value is way bigger to the prospect. So if you want to increase leases and retention, AIM Cruise Incentives will help you get an edge over your comps and help you lease up faster. Visit aimcruise.com. It's AIMcruise.com for additional information on their products and make this lease up year different.
Welcome to Student Housing Insight Podcast, where we are putting you in touch with the people who bring student housing to life. I'm your host, Wesley Deese, and I'm joined by my co-host, Gretta Dare. Gretta, how are you?
Hello. I am doing very well. How are you, sir?
I am doing fantastic. I am really excited for our audience to hear not just this episode, but all of the marketing and leasing episodes that you've got planned out for this summer, because I think they're fantastic. They are they are perfectly titled. And, I'm really excited because this first one you did went so long that we had to divide it into 3 different episodes. For those that don't keep track, I'm typically the one that gets long-winded, because I tend to say and have all these awkward thoughts and pauses, and
you're saying it, not me.
Exactly. And so it ends up being very long, and she gives me complete hell over it, and thinking that nobody's going to listen to a podcast that ends up being...
I am not the only one. You can't put this all off on me. Like, I am a big jerk and I am mean and I bully you because of your very slow Southern speech patterns.
I wish that's all I had to deal with, but anyway. But no, this first one, it's all these topics you're very passionate about when it comes to marketing and leasing in this industry. You just are. But this first one is marketing research, and which, if anybody listened to the first episode on this podcast, everybody knows that this is something that you're passionate about. And not that the first podcast was enough, you had to go out and find somebody else that felt the same way that you did
to discuss this subject in greater length. Yes, it just wasn't enough. I was thinking about that today after I had to re-listen to it so that we could do this, and I was like, I really we had this conversation, and dang it.
So, we had this topic of marketing research. Now the title, go announce the title for everybody again.
So it is Market Data, the Kingdom of the Crystal Ball. Nice play on Indiana Jones. I know. So it's really just me delving even further into how important I feel data and analysis of any given market really is, and all of the benefits that come from it, and of which I list them all out. There are many. I'm not going to go into all of it because obviously I have run my mouth enormously on this subject, so much so that you are now given rights to make fun of me about it, because we now have to break this up into 3 parts. But yes, I feel very, very passionately about the science behind the marketing. So, yes.
Well, and a little bit about your guest co-host on this is
my Maggie.
Yeah, so she does a great job of explaining, what she's done, and how she echoes a lot of the same thoughts that you have on this subject. Anything else you want to say about Maggie?
She's incredible. She is whip smart. And honestly, she's one of those people that I'm just grateful to have in my life. I talked to her after I re-listened to it today, and I was like, I think it turned out really well. The only thing I'm sad about is, since we did have the sound sound quality issues, that it sounds like, we're cutting each other off in kind of a rude way. And so she said, that was the same thing she was worried about. But so no, we really like each other a lot. We're not rude to each other, but she really is. She's incredible. And I was so grateful that, she took the time to sit down with me, and it was, a good 4 hours on a Saturday. And we are both so cool. We had nothing better to do except hang out and talk about market research, because that's what cool kids do.
I got a feeling that there had to have been a bottle of wine on each side of the phone for this conversation as well. Am I right or am I wrong?
Definitely, absolutely wrong. No, I'm so sorry to break it to you. Definitely not. There was no alcohol involved, but I could see why you would think that, because we did.
At least on your side, right?
No, there wasn't any wine on my side either. I swear, it was really just. I get fired up about this subject, man. It's really important to me.
Well, yeah, exactly, and it is one of those things. If you didn't bring a bottle of wine to this podcast, you'll probably want one after.
Could you not make it sound like it's stressful?
No, it's not that it's stressful, but yeah, I'm sure a lot of things are slowing down simply because of the rise of construction, which we'll talk about on another episode. But yeah, I look at a lot of deals that are being done, new development that's being done, and I just look back and I'm like, what the hell are you thinking? Like, are you just trying to get development fees out of this? And I just don't get it. And and then I listen to you and Maggie speak, and it's like, yeah, for so long within this industry, you could come in and put your finger in the air and figure out which way the wind was blowing, find a piece of land. Was enrollment going up or is enrollment going down? Okay, they're not able to house all their residents on campus. Let's build some student housing. And it can't be done like that anymore. It shouldn't have been done like that 10 years ago. And now I'm just getting upset about it. But it is one of those things that I'm kind of glad we split it over 3 episodes for a multitude of reasons. But just to go ahead and kind of warn everybody that there are going to be times that you listen to this, and if you are a developer who has done one of those stupid deals, or if you're a property manager who is managing one of those stupid deals where things were overbuilt, it's a great opportunity for you to listen and reflect and say, okay, this is where we're at, and let's make sure not to make this mistake again. And anyway, that's all I've got to say about it. All right.
Also, it's very friendly and fun, and there's a lot of laughter. So there's that. That's probably why you thought we were drinking. So it isn't hard to listen to. So that's good.
I'll just reiterate, every additional dollar spent in quality market research is, $2 that you're not going to have to spend, or $3 that you're not going to have to spend in marketing campaigns. Agreed. And I think you end up with a better product. You end up with something that obviously doesn't take a lot of marketing, and it's something that is a lot more symbiotic with the rest of that campus and what's around it. So let's go ahead and hit play, because regardless of how irritated I may get at some of the sins of the past, it's so refreshing to hear you and Maggie talk about this and see that, there is a better way of doing it.
Thanks, man.
All right, let's hit play.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Student Housing Insight. I am Gretta Dare. I am joined with my very good friend, Maggie Owens, and we are going to skip all of the pleasantries and jump right over to Maggie and have her tell all of you guys why it is I have her today because of her extensive background, or what I consider to be her extensive background in all things student housing and research. Go into it, Maggie.
Thanks so much, Greta. I'm so happy to be here. When Greta sent me that message and she said, hey, would you be interested in joining this podcast? I was like, of course, without a doubt. You know I'm passionate about this. So I have worked in student housing with firms both big and small, both on the developer side and then like the large owner operator and third party management side. And I have learned so much working from all these companies. But one thing that has always been so important to me in my decision making when looking at different assets throughout the country is the data. And one thing that Greta and I have shared is the need for science and data to control or direct the decisions that you make. And so that's what we're going to get into today. And I'm currently in Fayetteville, Arkansas, working for a different developer. I met Greta originally in Fayetteville years ago, and now I'm back in this market as a project manager for a development company that's regionally focused and focused primarily on market rate housing, even though my entire career has been in students. So let's get into this.
So here's what I love what you just said. And anybody, if this is not your first podcast, if you listen to, even just a handful of them, you've heard me say probably to an exceedingly annoying amount, which if it was annoying, I don't know why you're listening right now. However, you have heard me preach on and on about how important data is to me personally, because just like you said, Maggie, that was perfect. It is what drives every single move that I make. If you want me to make a decision, if you want me to bring an advertiser in, if you're talking to me about something, I need the data to back it up. I need to understand everything behind it. And I feel very strongly about it. It's one of the things I love and adore about you is that we see eye to eye about that. And then there is everything. And that is my obsession. And it is the science behind marketing, because there is a science behind marketing. It isn't just creativity. It isn't just copy and beautiful designs. It isn't just events. It is there should be something directing all of those decisions beyond gut instinct or what you're hearing from your teams, not to discount the validity of and the huge value of that information. But there is so much information that can be mined from every single market. And I think it should be found. I think it should be used. I think it should shape your decisions and direct them. So, the very first thing that we're going to go into is what data you should be collecting and you should be studying and why. And so that's going to be our first subject. One of the things that Wes puts in my bio every single time he writes it, and so it's always really funny to me, but I get it, is that the understanding a market is my superpower. Again, his words, not mine, but I do appreciate it. And it is just because of the data that I am obsessed with. And so what we're going to be talking about here are the things that I study in any market. And, Maggie knows what those things are. Maggie studies the same things. Again, probably why, we love each other the way that we do. And so we're going to go through that list. And so if they are things that you aren't currently looking into and you agree with the value in them, then I absolutely encourage you to look into them in any market that you're looking to develop, take over, purchase, whatever the case may be, new branding. These are the items to look at. So with that being said, I'm going to start us off. Maggie, I know that there's ones that you're specific about. I can say that the very first thing when I start with a new company, or when the company that I'm with is looking to develop, or I'm doing an actual market analysis to make recommendations from design all the way to the marketing plan, it is going to include the very first thing, which everybody looks at, which is obviously the number of comps and beds in the market along with enrollment. But I do feel like the study stops there. Do you agree with that, Mags?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, okay, great. We know how many beds are in the market. We know what enrollment is. So we think that we can put X number of beds in the market. But it goes so much deeper than that. And, like we've said previously in conversation, it's so much of understanding the market, understanding the data happens in the early development stages. But what you see often, whether you're a third-party manager getting a deal from a different developer, or you work in the marketing department at one of the larger companies, you get that information of like the location and everything. It's after the fact that the decisions have already been made. So what we've talked about is like using this data not only to inform how you market, but to what markets you want to go into.
That's absolutely. And it's funny because I think that was one of the very first things that frustrated me is that in previous positions, I would be told, hey, Greta, we're going to be going into this and this market. Here's the information we collected so far. And all of that information, the market analysis that I was provided with at the beginning really included the number of beds, number of comps, and enrollment numbers. For the past 3 years leading up to it, we've seen a growth. There's a need. And I think that that's my biggest frustration, because then I would receive it at that point. It's like, oh, we're going to go build in Tuscaloosa or Tallahassee or, one of the T's that are friggin' nightmare markets. But beyond that, we've already started to draw up plans. We're getting approval from the city. We figured out the land. We're already starting to write that and, the pro forma and decide on market rents. And now we need you to go and do the full market analysis and tell us, where we're going to go from here. And it's exactly what you just said, where everything that I'm going to be doing should be done from the very first time that you're looking at a market as a possibility before you pick out land, before you start talking to the city, because it isn't as simple as I'm going to go build a 600 bed property and it's all going to have, it's going to have a mix of 4 bedrooms to 1 bedrooms. This is what it's going to look like. And we're going to have all of these basic amenities, and then we're going to have a huge marketing plan. It's going to be great. It's going to lease up, because let's all be honest right now.
We're going to spend a ton of money.
We're going to spend a ton of money on marketing, but not only that. Yes. But here's the problem is that there's so many people, and this especially happens with new developers, where it's, they go in and they do it because that's what it looks like everybody's doing. But then they didn't budget enough for the hundreds of thousands of dollars in marketing that you're spending in that first year lease up. And in my opinion, and this is the next subject that we're going to cover after we go through all of these different data points, is you don't need to spend that money if you do all of the research in advance. And that is before you pick the land, before you decide on what kind of product it is that you're going to build. Understand the student market. And this goes into any product that you are actually going to be creating. And this is what you and I talked about and agreed upon, is that in student housing, this seems to be the only industry that says, I'm going to make this product, and then I'm going to spend a ton of marketing to shotgun it out there and just hope that a lot of students, enough students stick where I can have a 30% closing ratio and I can fill up to 100%. And that is not what happens. It's not how Pepsi does it. It's not like they're just out there showing somebody drinking a Pepsi and then shooting it across all demographics. They know their market. They know that it's, it's the younger generation. For somehow it has been for the last 20 years. It just consistently, they're going after a younger audience, but they're bringing in, they bring in the pop stars that are any stars that are applicable to that brand. And they developed the brand. They knew the niche for their brand. They understand the demographics behind their brand. And then they market to that brand. They built that product and market to it. And we aren't doing that in student housing. We aren't going into the market and we aren't actually looking at all of the in-depth information that we can that's actually available to us. So it does go beyond number of comps, number of beds, enrollment numbers. That's not enough. Or, along with obviously existing or market rents. The other additional items that truly matter that will impact you are going to be the number of housing scholarships, the financial aid, number of people that are on financial aid. What kind of demographics is it? How many kids are in Greek? What are the total? What size of school is this? What are the lifestyles of each of these students? What do they do with their spare time? Are they more studious? Is it a research school? Is it a sports school? Is it a party school? Is it, what kind of places do these kids come from? What is their hometown? And what do those hometowns look like? How much money do their parents make? All of this is going to dictate what type of students are actually there, how much money they have. So how much money they have to spend on your property, what their lifestyle consists of. So what your amenities should look like. And then all of that gets wrapped into what does your marketing plan look like and how do you actually reach those students, as opposed to just building a basic product that you now say, okay, now go out into the market and try to capture all of the students. We're going to market to the athletics. We're going to market to the Greeks. We're going to market to all of the student orgs. We're going to market to literally everyone, because we created a basic blanket product without actually looking to see where is the available niche in this market that we can go after. I'm going to pause for a minute so that you can say words, because I talk really fastly and passionately. So any additions that you have to everything that I just said?
Yeah, I feel bad for everybody that has to try to keep up with this conversation.
I know. Wes always tells me to slow down. It's so bad.
Yeah, so we had talked before this call, obviously, and about these items. And when it comes to really understanding, like what Gretta's saying, how much financial aid is out there and how does that financial aid affect where they spend it, especially when it comes to housing scholarships. I've worked on a few deals, and one of them in particular, they wouldn't allow, like 40% of the students roughly lived on campus, and those housing scholarships were not allowed to be used at off-campus housing. Everything about the market looked great.
I'm so glad you brought this up.
Location was great. I mean, and so often you're not going to know that stuff until you really dive in. I mean, I was emailing like the deans of the honors program and all these different departments because I needed to understand, holy crap, like what is going to happen if I go into this market and they can't use their scholarship money here. And fortunately for me, in that company that I was with, we did a ton of market research and like sending teams into markets prior to actually going there. So they were a company that really understood my perspective, and they shared the same perspective on how they needed to approach new markets. And so I would go out to the market with a huge team of people. We would be doing focus groups and really understanding, okay, how are these people paying for their housing right now? Where do they live? And what, like, floor plans, or like how many people are they living with? How many roommates are they comfortable with? What amenities do they want? All that stuff that makes your product better, and it's going to help you so much in the long run when it comes to what you're spending your money on. And
it fills a need in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. It's filling that need. And like we're talking a lot about like that niche group, and you're understanding, and you get to carve out what your niche is going to be when you go there and you figure out what the issues are in the market and where the need is, versus just saying, hey, this is what product that we deliver typically across the board, which there's nothing wrong with that. But what we're seeing more and more in the industry is that it's so hard to achieve your occupancy year over year. And so you got to differentiate yourself. And especially when you're going into new markets where previously, like 5, even 10 years ago, I would say is like extreme, but 5 years ago or 3 years ago, you know, you would be the only one going into the market with vinyl plank flooring and hard surface countertops, and
which
really
has all
nice
become completely standard at this point. Yeah.
And at this point, it's like, oh shoot, everyone's doing that. And so how are you going to make yourself different? Is that through your unit mix? Is it through your amenities? Or is it through the other kind of offerings that you can provide that no one else in the market is going to provide? And you won't know necessarily what that need is unless you're collecting the data. And I have always been a huge follower of brands. Like since I was a really young girl, I remember like cutting out magazine clippings and then like placing everything together and was like, oh my gosh, I just obsess about certain brands. And one of those that I can speak about is LaCroix. I remember obsessing about this years and years ago. I mean, it honestly tastes terrible.
For all of those who wondered if Maggie was basic or not basic, the question is now answered. Continue on.
Okay. Well, I actually don't purchase the product and I don't drink it, but I'm all about the and I'm all about the brand that they have. And I mean, it's not a new product.
Totally valid point. Absolutely.
And what they have done, especially in the last 3 years, is really transformed and targeted millennials in a different way. And it's through brand experiences. It's through social media.
And they're being copied. Have you seen that? I think it's Coke. I can't remember if it's Coke or Pepsi. Somebody listening right now knows if it's Coke or Pepsi. But they're getting the whole concept as being like fully ripped off because that's how good it is. Just sparkly, bubbly water that doesn't actually taste that great, but it's in pretty cans that Instagram well. Pepsi.
As I sit here and I look at my laptop, I have a LaCroix sticker. And above my desk in my office, I had like a script thing from a LaCroix photo booth thing that I went to. And I mean, LaCroix does it so well. And that obviously like a consumer packaged good is totally different than student housing and like a long-term asset. And it's obviously at a different price point, but there's so many marketing principles that can be applied. And one thing that I would say is that you have these big brands, and in no other industry do you have someone like saying, oh, here's a $25 million plus asset. And I know that you don't have a ton of marketing experience and you're kind of new and fresh to this, but I'd really like you to go out and market this.
And here's $30,000 worth of promo. Go hand it all out. And we have no idea what our ROI is. Just go get the word out. Thanks.
And that's my biggest thing is that I have to be able to track my ROI. I need to know why we're making these decisions, and I need to know why I'm going into a market. And if I go into a market and I realize that the data shows me that all these people are from X, Y, and Z hometown, then I'm going to target that town in my advertisement because I want to get those guarantors super excited about my project. And initially, I want to know, like the average household income in those hometowns and what's the average household income of the student coming to this university, because so much of that is going to drive how much money how much I can push the rent, especially year over year. So in Fayetteville, for example, it's in Arkansas, it's in Northwest Arkansas, but so many of the students are from Dallas. And there's so much wealth of knowledge that you're able to gain from really understanding what does that mean that they're from Dallas? And how does that affect when we market, and what high schools are these people coming from? And all that information is readily available from universities that are public. Private, it's a lot harder, but if you do some digging and some relationship building, a lot of times you can find that out. And that's the stuff that you need to help inform your decisions on where you're developing and what your pro formas are going to be. Because if you go into certain markets, and I've seen this firsthand, you go into a market with this pro forma, and it is so far off from what you actually needed. And not only does that create a problem for the developer, the management company, and your investment group, I mean, it's not good for anybody. And all that takes is research on the front end to be able to avoid so much of that.
All right. Well, that wraps up part 1 of 3. We've got part 2 of 3 coming up. I think all these will end up being released at the same time, if not probably a day or so apart from each other. But go on to part 2 of 3, where we get the rest of the conversation. Gretta kind of recaps some things that were discussed on this one, and then we get into other data points. So anything else?
No, I just, I did want to say that I tried to make it to where, after we finished a subject somewhat well, that I recapped things in a way that, in the event, this is not me assuming, in the event you are a person who was potentially keeping track or maybe writing something down, that made it easier. So, so those recaps are in there, and that was kind of the purpose of it. But as a reminder, I do want to remind everybody, as well as thank AIM Cruise Incentives for sponsoring my entire series this summer. If you are unfamiliar with AIM Cruise Incentives, definitely go check them out at AIM, that's AIM, as in Mary, cruise.com.
Yeah, they've been a wonderful sponsor and just a great product overall. So looking forward to some of the things they're doing. Make sure you listen to the last episode on how, on how you, the listener, can actually win a cruise for 2.
Yay!
All right, guys, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Bye.